Isn't it remarkable the way our ancestors could distill the most sprawling, chaotic truths of the human condition into a single, cohesive narrative? Long before we had the language of psychology or strategic theory, they gave us myths and stories, vessels designed to carry wisdom across the centuries. And perhaps no vessel is as vast, as deep, or as dark as the story of a whaling ship named the Pequod and its captain's hunt for the white whale. On the surface, Herman Melville's Moby Dick is a grand adventure story, a detailed account of a forgotten industry. But to leave it there is to see only the surface of the ocean and miss the colossal life that moves in the depths. The story is not about hunting a whale. It is about the human war against the very nature of reality. It's an ancient story that serves as a profound and terrifyingly relevant piece of modern wisdom, a mirror held up to our own age of relentless ambition and obsessive certainty. To truly understand the tragedy of the Pequod, we must first ask the central question: what is Moby Dick? To the natural world, the answer is simple. He is an animal, a uniquely powerful and intelligent one, yes, but an animal nonetheless. He acts according to his nature. He defends himself when attacked. He has no concept of good or evil, no moral agenda. He is a force of nature, as impersonal and as immoral as a hurricane or an earthquake. But that is not what Captain Ahab sees. For Ahab, the whale is not an animal at all. He is a symbol. He is, in Ahab's own haunting words, a pasteboard mask. Behind that white, wrinkled brow, Ahab perceives a malevolent intelligence, an active, thinking evil. Moby Dick becomes the physical embodiment of every injustice, every random cruelty, every cosmic insult that the universe has ever hurled at mankind. The whale is a wall that stands between Ahab and the ultimate meaning of things, and his obsession is to smash through that wall. Herein lies the first layer of the story's genius. It illustrates the profoundly human tendency to project intention onto chaos. We are pattern-seeking creatures, meaning-making machines. When faced with a world that often operates on randomness and indifference, we find it almost impossible to accept. We cannot bear the thought that suffering can be meaningless, and so we invent a devil to blame. For Ahab, that devil is a white whale. For us, it might be the faceless system, the cruelty of the stock market, or the perceived malice of a rival company. We wage a moral war against an amoral enemy, screaming at the hurricane for its wickedness, never realizing the hurricane cannot hear us. The tragedy is not that the universe is cruel, but that we demand it make sense on our own terms, and are driven to madness when it refuses. And it is this madness that is personified in Captain Ahab, one of literature's most compelling studies of obsession. Is he a hero or a madman? The story intentionally blurs the line. In his defiance, in his refusal to bow to fate or to God, there is a flicker of the heroic. He is a man who, having found the universe to be without inherent meaning, decides to forge his own. His meaning is vengeance. But the story shows us the catastrophic price of such a self-made purpose when it is born from a wound. Ahab is not just a captain. He is a master manipulator, a charismatic demagogue. Consider the moment he reveals his true quest. He doesn't merely issue an order. He performs a ritual. He gathers the entire crew, a microcosm of the world's races and nations, and with a speech of fire and fury, he nails a Spanish gold doubloon to the mast. It is a prize for the first man to spot the white whale, but it is so much more. It is a sacrament. It is the physical consecration of their new, unholy purpose. He takes a purely economic enterprise, a whaling voyage meant for profit, and transforms it into a cult of personality, a singular crusade. He hijacks the crew's greed and their thirst for adventure and channels it into his own private vendetta. The crew, in a frenzy, pledges their loyalty. In that moment, they cease to be individual whalers and become extensions of Ahab's will. This is a timeless warning about the terrifying power of charismatic leadership when it is yoked to a singular, obsessive goal. We see it in history, with leaders who drag entire nations into devastating wars based on a personal grievance. We see it in the corporate world, with visionary CEOs whose obsessive pursuit of a single metric can lead a company to ruin, ignoring all other signs of ill health. The voice of reason, the first mate Starbuck, sees the madness for what it is. He protests vengeance on a dumb brute that simply smote thee from blindest instinct. Madness. But reason's a quiet voice, easily drowned out by the roar of a shared, intoxicating purpose. Starbuck's failure to stop Ahab is one of the story's most chilling lessons in the battle between pragmatic reason and a powerful, unifying narrative. Reason rarely stands a chance. The Pequot itself is more than just a ship. It is a floating world, a society in miniature. On its decks are men from every corner of the earth, a diverse collection of beliefs, backgrounds, and temperaments. It is a floating America, a melting pot held together by a common enterprise. But as Ahab's obsession takes hold, this diversity is erased. It is subsumed into a single monolithic identity, the hunters of Moby Dick. The ship becomes a perfect model for how an entire society can be consumed by the madness of its leader. The normal functions of their world are abandoned. They pass by bountiful schools of other whales, opportunities for the very profit they set out to gain, but Ahab orders the ship to press on. The mission is all that matters. The crew, bound by their oath and mesmerized by their captain's iron will, becomes complicit in their own destruction. They have traded their individual agency and their rational self-interest for the intoxicating thrill of being part of an epic story, a grand, mythic quest. It speaks to a deep human need to belong to something larger than ourselves, and the danger that arises when that need is exploited by a will bent on destruction. The Pequot shows us that a society, no matter how diverse or robust, is fragile. It can be hijacked, its moral compass shattered, and its entire population steered toward an abyss by the magnetism of a single, powerful obsession. And then, after the final cataclysmic confrontation, after 3 days of furious battle, after Ahab is dragged to his death by the very line he threw, after the white whale turns and splinters the Pequot into nothing, there is the silence of the sea. And in that silence, one man survives, Ishmael. The question that echoes through the end of the novel is, why? Why is this young wanderer, the one who began the journey with a simple desire for adventure, the sole survivor of this metaphysical shipwreck? The answer is the philosophical core of the entire work. Ishmael survives because he is the observer, unlike Ahab, who seeks to impose his will upon the world, to conquer its mysteries and punish its perceived evils. Ishmael is a man who accepts the world's ambiguity. He floats, he listens, he watches. He doesn't demand that the universe make sense. He is comfortable in its mystery, while Ahab represents the defiant ego raging against the limits of human understanding. Ishmael represents a kind of profound humility. His survival is not an accident. It is the natural outcome of his worldview. And the instrument of his salvation is one of the most powerful symbols in all of literature, a coffin. The coffin, built for his friend Queequeg, becomes his life raft. It rises from the vortex that swallows the Pequod, a perfect, paradoxical image. Life springing from death, salvation found in the acceptance of mortality. Ishmael survives not because he is stronger or smarter, but because he is able to drift. He lets the currents of the vast, unknowable ocean carry him, rather than trying to command the tides. He survives because he understands that the greatest wisdom is not in finding all the answers, but in learning to live with the questions. In the end, the story of Ahab and the white whale is a complete philosophical system. It presents us with the fundamental conflict of our existence, the finite, meaning-seeking human will, represented by Ahab, set against the infinite indifferent, and chaotic universe, embodied by Moby Dick. In between is the society, the crew of the Pequod, which is so often swept up in the grand, destructive narratives of its leaders. And finally, there is the path of Ishmael, the path of the survivor, which suggests that wisdom lies not in conquering the chaos, but in learning to float upon its surface with humility and wonder. The tale is a masterful allegory for the danger of absolute certainty, the peril of allowing a single story, a single grievance, to become the totality of one's world. It warns us that when we project all the world's evil onto a single external enemy, we risk becoming the very evil we seek to destroy. Ahab's quest for vengeance did not cleanse the world of malice. It only added to it, ultimately consuming him and everyone who followed him. The story, then, leaves us with a lingering question, one that is as relevant today in our boardrooms, our political arenas, and our own private lives as it was on the deck of a 19th century whaling ship. We all have our own white whales, the frustrating obstacle, the painful memory, the perceived injustice that consumes our thoughts. The question Melville leaves us is not whether we will face these things, but how. Will we be the captain who, in the fury of defiance, nails our very soul to the mast and chases our obsession to the bottom of the sea? Or will we be the lone survivor, who, by embracing the vast and mysterious ocean of existence, learns how to float?